Canelo versus Crawford would not be close. Welcome back, everybody. This is Breezes with the Fighting Post. Today I wanted to discuss a very hot topic in boxing with the potential of Crawford versus Canelo in the very near future. Recently, Turki Al-Sheikh has shown a very big interest in wanting to see Canelo and Crawford face each other. It surprises me that he's more interested in wanting to see Canelo versus Crawford versus Canelo versus Benavidez. So this video is taking place before Crawford faces Madrimov this upcoming Saturday. But before even seeing that fight, I wanted to see historically what has happened when a fighter jumps up in different weight classes. So a trend that we've seen in boxing is fighters going up multiple divisions and conquering different weight classes more than they did in the past. The obvious reason for that could be, well, now there's more weight divisions, it's not just lightweight, welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, heavyweight. There's a lot more divisions in between. While in the smaller divisions, you have jumps that are only a couple pounds. When looking at the jump that Crawford is attempting to make here, you're looking at a pretty big difference. So Crawford is a 3-division champion at the moment, has won titles in 3 different weight classes, 135, 140, 147. He's going to face Madrimov for the WBA title at 154. Thinking of the jump between 154 to 168 is honestly a pretty big feat. It'd be different if we were talking about Crawford facing a champion who wasn't as strong or as proven as Canelo. The truth of the matter is, wherever you have him, Canelo is still a top 10 fighter in the world. If Canelo showed obvious slippage and that he was completely over the hill, we'd be having a different discussion. But the fact that Canelo is still a top 10 fighter proves that this fight is more dangerous than many people seem to believe. I remember when Floyd was a top pound for pound fighter and Andre Ward was a super middleweight champion. Even though we all knew that if you shrunk Andre Ward down to Floyd's size, he would easily be able to outbox him, we never really put that fight in our heads because the weight jumps seemed too drastic. Not saying that Crawford isn't an all-time great, he is. But if we didn't have that mentality for Floyd Mayweather, who is clearly and undisputedly one of the top fighters of all time, why is it that we think that Crawford can jump all the way up to 168 and face Canelo? The argument that people seem to make is, well, Canelo's not a natural 168 pounder. And while that's true, he's clearly shown the ability to bulk up in weight and face the competition with no problem. So there's 2 ways that people believe Crawford can win the fight. The first is obvious: box, hit, don't get hit. It's something that we've seen Canelo lose to before, i.e. Floyd Mayweather and Dimitri Bivol. And while Crawford's defense is exceptional, his fighter tendency is characteristic. He's a boxer puncher. And I don't think he goes into a fight just simply looking to outbox someone. He wants to hurt you. I think that's where his personality and his characteristics will fail him. When it comes to Canelo, he has clearly shown he has an iron chin. He's taken shots from Triple G, he took shots from a prime Daniel Jacobs, he fought an over-the-hill Kovalev, but he was still known as the Crusher and was a champion when he fought him. He took hits from a light heavyweight in Dimitri Bivol. Those fighters are just recent examples, to name a few. Canelo has also shown the ability to at least provide competitive fights with boxers such as Lara and Austin Trout. Now, whether or not you thought he won those fights is a completely different discussion. The truth of the matter is he's been in the ring with them, he's faced those styles, both in the past and recently. In some of his more recent fights with Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant, I remember thinking a lot of people were saying that Canelo was going to get outboxed. Now, with hindsight, people like to say that those were cherry picks and that they were easy calls to make, but the truth of the matter is many people in the community were saying that he was going to get outboxed. Canelo showed an ability to be patient and hit both fighters with shots that eventually would get to them. In Billy Joe Saunders' case, his orbital bone being broken is a freak, incident, but it's still something that could happen. When it came to Caleb Plant, while he's known to be a very strong starter, he's not a strong finisher, and he gets hit a lot towards the end of the fight. So as Caleb Plant began to slow down, you could clearly see that Canelo was picking up, and eventually got to him. Now, Crawford doesn't have the same issues that Billy Joe Saunders has or that Caleb Plant has. Crawford is high-level stamina, high-level IQ, and he is able to keep the same pace going for all 12 rounds. But that's not the point I'm trying to make here. The truth of the matter is, I haven't seen a fight where Crawford doesn't get hit. And again, it's not because his defense isn't great, it's because of his fighting style and his characteristics. So knowing that Crawford doesn't want to go in there and just simply outbox someone, he wants to be able to take your hit, see what you're offering, and then provide power in exchange. After the Errol Spence fight, everyone has gassed up Crawford to be this larger-than-life giant who cannot be defeated by anyone. And while I'm glad Crawford is finally getting the flowers he deserves, there has to be a limit to where we say, okay, enough is enough. Crawford's power has carried through all the way to 147. His last 11 fights have been stoppage. Potentially the Madrimov fight might end by stoppage too, but comparing Madrimov to Canelo are 2 different animals. And while Crawford has always found a way, there is definitely going to be a limit to how much he can accomplish. Errol Spence and Canelo are nothing alike. In regards to both of them being body punchers, people make that comparison, and sure, that's a fair comparison to make, but the truth of the matter is Canelo is much more of a natural counterpuncher versus Errol Spence's style of coming forward and breaking you down systematically. Another thing that people seem to just kind of gloss over is the fact that no matter which way you slice it, Errol Spence was not the same fighter at that point. He had been in multiple car accidents, he clearly wasn't living the boxing life, and he was very inconsistent in regards to his scheduling in the ring. Since the Sean Porter fight, we honestly rarely saw Errol Spence, and that level of inactivity has plagued so many PBC fighters and has ultimately been their downfall. I think two things can be true. So while I think that Errol Spence was obviously no longer the same fighter, I think Crawford was always a great fighter. Crawford was always going to beat him. I actually picked Crawford to win via 9th round knockout in that fight. As I stated earlier, while the flowers are well deserved and long overdue, it's one thing for Crawford to believe that he can beat any fighter in the world. It's another thing for the general boxing public to also have that same mentality. I remember not too long ago, people were saying Canelo will jump up to light heavyweight and meet Usyk and they'll fight. Now in hindsight, after seeing the Bivol fight, it's clear to see that that was a ridiculous statement being made. But at the time, there was people that genuinely thought that Canelo could pull it off. Canelo's power will honestly be the key difference here. It's clear as night and day that Crawford is the better boxer. No one's going to make that argument against you. Because of his high knockout ratio and the fact that he was able to dominate the most impressive fighter he's ever faced in Errol Spence, a lot of people think he'll be able to do the same thing to Canelo and knock him out as well. Whether you like him or not, Canelo's chin has been tested, has been proven. He's very unlikely to get knocked out. Obviously, anything can happen in boxing, but the likelihood of Canelo getting knocked out by Crawford is slim to none. On the flip side, when it comes to Canelo's power, the chances are very high that he will be able to get to Crawford. A lot of people are saying he will not be able to hit Crawford cleanly, Crawford will make him miss, make him pay. Canelo will eventually get to him. A lot of people like to say that Canelo hasn't been facing the best competition, and while I would agree that there's better fighters that he could face, he has been hurting every single fighter since that Bivol fight. I remember seeing the third Triple G fight and the difference in Canelo's solidness. Triple G didn't seem as motivated to come forward. It's almost like he felt a different fighter in there. And it could be a little bit of the age, but it could also be the fact that this isn't the same young fighter I was once fighting. When it came to the John Ryder performance, he clearly put up a valiant effort, lost a lopsided decision, was dropped multiple times, had his face broken, but still, Canelo showed that he still has power. In the fights following John Ryder, he was able to drop Munguia, he was able to drop Charlo. Whether he's stopping fighters or not, he's still making his opposition touch the canvas. As even Bivol had shown that his bicep was hurt from all the punches he was taking. So while Canelo may not be able to catch Crawford cleanly on the chin, he's clearly going to be able to catch his arms, maybe his stomach. He's going to be able to land a shot. To say Crawford's just completely not going to get touched at all would be a foolish thing to say. Canelo has shown that he is still a top fighter. He will be able to land, and when he does land, I don't think Crawford's chin will be able to take it. At 147, Crawford has a very solid build and has shown that this is most likely his natural weight class. In addition to the fact that Gamboa landed a very clean shot, I think more than anything, Crawford might have been a little bit weight trained at that division, hence affecting his chin. This isn't a Pacquiao-Margarito situation where one fighter has clearly better footwork, a clearly better IQ, and is a lot better than their opponent. While Canelo does have slow feet, he's a thinking fighter. He's not just coming in to try to get you, and that's where I think this fight will go wrong for Crawford.